Yeah, well, public safety is obviously a huge issue. In fact, I've said it's the #1 issue out there. Even though the county hasn't historically played a role, it's been more the city with the city police department, with other programs like that. But increasingly, unless we address crime and particularly stop it for young people in our community, nothing else matters. If you're not safe, it doesn't matter if you got a house, doesn't matter if you got a job, if you're not safe. And so we've done it a variety of different ways. Remember a couple different years ago, the lakefront, there were a couple things right at the beginning of the summer that rose up and were real problems. We went in and worked with Sheriff Clark and gave him the tools and the resources to really occupy and take over the lakefront. We did it again last year. And the nice thing is, in 2007, you didn't see any problems down at the lakefront. Families were down there, they were enjoying themselves. We gave the sheriff the resources he needed to have special focus on that. And for 2008, we've taken it a step further. We've said, let's not just do that in the lakefront. Let's do it throughout all the different parks. There's 144, almost 150 different parks and parkways in Milwaukee County. Let's make sure every park, whether it's Washington, McGovern, whether it's Kosciuszko or anything in between, let's make sure they're all safe. And so we give the sheriff the resources to do that, to be out in the buses with security units that are already there, to do all these things. But then the other part of it is not just in terms of enforcement. We've been working, a lot of people are surprised because the media doesn't often talk about this. You don't read it in the paper, but even with our budget challenges over the last several years, every year I've been in our budgets, we put more money, more resources into slots for programs targeted at young offenders. We do special programs like the Focus program, special programs that target folks who maybe have been involved initially nonviolently but had something to do with a firearm. And we've had tremendous success. We put more money in the slots, and in the end, by the end of the year, actually save money because we keep those kids out of the state juvenile system. That, if you can believe it or not, the state government this past year raised the price of what it cost any county, not just Milwaukee County, to send a young person into the state system to almost $100,000 per year, $98,000. You could send 19 kids to UWM for that. We found a better way to keep people out of that state system, and that's starting to pay dividends, and we think that's a good sign for the future. Now, fortunately, while there's a lot of good things happening, I know we'll be talking about that soon as well, but last year one of the things we broke a record on in the county, and we're not unlike other parts of the country, a lot of places have seen foreclosures all across America, unfortunately, but last year was a record year for foreclosures for Milwaukee County. They were all over the place. There's 19 different cities and villages in Milwaukee County. Every one of them had foreclosures. But the biggest spot, the most foreclosures, 87% in the entire county were in the city of Milwaukee, and most of those were in the poorest of the poor neighborhoods. And I said, we've got to do a number of things. The county treasurer, Dan Diliberti, has been out with our blessing doing special, in fact, he just did this past week and will be doing more special seminars to help people who are facing maybe delinquency and paying taxes and close to foreclosure. We've got other programs out there, but probably the biggest thing government can do is help to hold the line on property taxes. If somebody's a long-time property owner, if maybe a retired couple, I've heard of those, heard from those, I should say, and all over the county, but I remember a couple in Sherman Park who were retired, living in a duplex. They rented out the upper flat, and they kept telling me, hey, if these taxes keep going up, we don't know that we can continue to live in our own home anymore. Maybe it's a young family just starting out for the first time, and they've got a job, but it's one that maybe isn't going up with wages each year, and yet they're saying, hey, our property taxes are knocking us right out. When people are living from paycheck to paycheck, every penny counts, and that's why I fought so hard for so long to try and hold the line on the property tax, because it's not just folks who live in the suburbs, it's not just retirees, it's people of all areas, all backgrounds, and typically the people who have the biggest challenge when property taxes go up 5, 6, 7% like they did before I got here are some of the poorest people in our community who are working poor, making just enough to cover their mortgage and their bills, and we've been able to hold the line on the taxes to keep it under 2% the last couple of years, and that'll help us keep people from having to go into foreclosure.
And another issue facing our community is the jobs. How will you work to bring more jobs, give people more jobs?
Huge issue. It's one of those where the mayor always says this, jobs, jobs, jobs. I agree with that as well, a variety of different ways. Certainly when I talked about taxes for residents, part of the reason why I'm passionate about that is not only to keep more people in their homes, it's to keep more employers here. I look at something like the Miller Brewing Company, which announced last year that by this summer they're going to do a joint venture with Coors Brewing Company out of Colorado. Well, part of what they're looking at is the cost of doing business. I want to be in a competitive position where I say those jobs should stay right here in Milwaukee and Milwaukee County and not be going to Colorado, not be going to some other place in the United States. And part of that means I need to show them that it's not more costly to do business here. So some of it's looking at taxes. Other things is just going out and working hard, hustling for those jobs, hustling for those employers. And we've done it. We brought 3 international business units to the Milwaukee County Research Park with GE Healthcare. Those are good-paying jobs that are family-supporting jobs. We helped Bucyrus International, which is in Milwaukee and South Milwaukee, with good jobs. In fact, they're recruiting and training for welders that are paying $70,000, $80,000 a year jobs. P&H, which is another large-scale mining company, which is growing in a global market. We're doing things like that. We work with Roundy's to bring their corporate headquarters downtown and have more jobs there. We're working with other projects on the horizon. We work with people like Supervisor Michael Mayo to help with the 30th Street corridor and say, with all those buildings that were once there, how can we revitalize those, put new energy, put new strength into that, and help create jobs out there. By a county board supervisor last year about our appointments. And we went back and looked and found that our cabinet is as diverse, if not more diverse, than any cabinet that's ever been in place before. But I actively went out and recruited more women, more people of color to be in my cabinet because they were good, talented people, but in the past, for whatever reasons, they weren't just welcome in those roles in county government. And so we've been very aggressive in that, and I think that's part of how you do it, that no one person knows exactly how everybody else in the community feels or thinks or sees things. The best way you do it is by having a very wide spectrum of people that advise you and support you and work with you, and that's exactly what we've done.
How do you and your opponent differ in other issues outside of the county issues?
Sure. Well, there's a variety of county issues out there, but I think probably the most prominent thing is in school choice. Even when I was in the legislature, and I was proud to serve there for about 8.5 years before I was elected to support all the people in Milwaukee County as the executive. School choice was something I felt very passionately about. I support the public schools. I'm out there frequently. I've visited many times. I support charter schools, but I do think for a growing number of families in our community, for almost 20,000 now, school choice is a very positive impact on this community. It's something that's growing and exciting and dynamic, and unfortunately that's an issue where Senator Taylor and I differ. She has been very active in opposition to that, and I think that's one of those for the long term. The more options we have, no one is perfect. They've all got a variety of impacts, and I'm going to support the public schools just as much as I support the choice schools. But I think that's a key difference, and it's something where, whether it's somebody like Jason Fields or years ago Antonio Riley was someone I worked with in the legislature on that issue because they knew the more choices you give kids, particularly low-income kids in Milwaukee, the better off they're going to be.
How are your plans for the redevelopment of the Park East going to help Central City residents?
Well, I think it's real exciting. When you look at the jobs and the building that's already starting up there, you look at the potential to add even more profit. We've got a number of projects in total what the county's done, and we're not even close to being done yet. We're going to add some $300 million worth of new value to the city of Milwaukee and to Milwaukee County. On top of that, you had the construction jobs that come there, the long-term jobs that come from the employers that will be based there, either in retail, commercial, or industry. And I think that's a big boom because those jobs are targeted towards people in the city of Milwaukee. You then take it a step further and say, really the goal, at least in my mind, of the Park East Freeway corridor, north of the Bradley Center, is to take that a step further and then reach out and to look at all the good that's been happening on King Drive. We see all sorts of projects, all the way up to the Loves Ponderosa and up the way to CYD and everything else that's going on. I'd like to connect that all to downtown and to say, manpower's there, you got other exciting things there. Let's see King Drive all the way through, past the Rose Center, all the way on up, past the Hope School, and keep on going and bring that kind of excitement. Same way to the west. A few years ago, not long after I got in, I sat down with Beth Cobbs-Jones, supervisor from the near west side, and said, we need to revitalize this area. And we took the building at 12th and Valete, redid it, refocused it, opened it up so people felt welcome and put glass in and light and excitement, renamed it after her mother, of course, Marcia P. Cobbs, who had been in, obviously, someone I respected from the state legislature. But we said the same thing. Let's connect all that growth, the growth in the old Pabst Brewery. Let's connect that, not make it stop at the freeway, but go across Valete into the west side of Milwaukee and make it happen for folks.